The people who condone this in the congregation, they all chose it. And they all continue to choose it, which is so interesting because when do we continue to choose it and clap? We choose and we clap because everyone else is doing it. But maybe everyone else is doing it because no one else is standing up and saying, hey, was there another option? Was there an option for her to have a meeting with you behind the scenes, for her to go through this process and understand, it happened. We can't go backwards. What's so interesting about everyone's sin and the difference between the sin that shows up. So the sins of people, and their sexual orientation shows up. The sin of people being pregnant shows up. So everyone thinks that because their sin is visible, that they need harsher punishment. But it's the invisible ones, it's the subtle ones, it's the ones that we feel like we're okay because we're behind scenes that also are just as much of a problem. If it's supposed to be this, if this is how your system is used, if you want to go through this system in church, you also have to admit that everybody should be standing up there with her. And everybody should be going through the line and say, I cursed someone out last night, or I masturbated last night, or with all the other sins that's in there. I looked at a woman and I wanted to woo her up with my body.
So that was weird.
Today's video is going to be a tough one because when I seen this video seep into my algorithm, I knew that a lot of people would respond to this content, that we all saw it, we all would be in outrage, we would be upset, and something else would come into our algorithm and we might not think much of it. But I challenged myself to get on to record this particular video because I was going to avoid this topic. I did not want to record on this topic, although I think it makes sense for what I want to do here on the channel. I did not want to explore this topic, and that is why I'm exploring this topic. So we're going to watch this video from a church where a young lady is sharing that she's pregnant towards the congregation. I'm going to share my initial response, and then we're going to go through some assignments. So here on this channel, we are going within and beyond. I call you all my in friends because it's more about what happens after we consume the content or the content is presented to us. How do we go beyond that? And one of the techniques that I want to use here is journaling. I'm not an expert on living on earth, but I have took time to pause and to reflect and see whenever I am consuming content, where do I want to go next with it? And I am inviting you all on that journey. So let's go ahead and look at this video together. As I'm about to do this video, like inside of me, I'm just already like, it doesn't feel good to have to share this video. One, there's so much happening here that is related to trauma that stems from the church. And I don't think that I am the only one who has had interesting experiences with the church and still at the same time have a belief system that leans towards what I see Christ's behavior is, that leans towards what binds us together, what allows us to grow and to connect as a community. I still have that desire, but it's content like this where you stop and you pause and you wonder, what is going on in the world, right? What's happening? Why is this still happening? It's also another side of the coin where we're on the internet and content in my algorithm is going to send me interesting topics that's related to all the things that I might be searching, all the things I might be interested in, all the things that my community are interested in, anything that's trending. And sometimes when we're looking at trending topics, there's an opportunity for us to stop and say, like, are we in some type of like bubble or system that we just keep going over this over and over again We see the content, we get upset, we go to the next. Now it's time for us to pause and reflect, like, why is this happening? What are the questions that we have? What are some of the prompts that we need to position to ourselves to realize why we keep coming past this type of trend? Okay, before I get on my little talking thing, let's go ahead and watch this video.
To approach the church at this time in Jesus' name. Come on, sister.
Really quickly, as you're watching this video, this is something that I do. I take notes anytime that I'm listening to anything. Like if it's a podcast, if it's a sermon, if it's something that I'm reviewing, I take notes so that I could reflect on what actually I'm listening to. So I've had the transcript for this and I wanted to dig into this a little bit further, but I want you all to just practice this with me. When we're reviewing any content on the internet, take out a book and start writing notes, like what stands out to you. Okay, let's go.
Praise the Lord, saints.
Stand right in front of the congregation. Yeah, right in front of it. Don't touch that table.
I want to apologize to everybody in here because I am pregnant. I'm sorry, y'all. And I just hope that y'all all forgive me and come praying for me.
They say, as soon as you repent, then you never wait later to repent. If you sin, you don't wait no 2, 3. You don't wait till the baby comes to repent. You repent now. You just don't do it again. But you got to repent. I don't care how you look at it. You already know. You already know what time it is.
Mm-hmm. No, what time is it?
Told her. It's not what you think it is. The church praying for you. We ain't gonna condone your sin now. We ain't gonna do that. Ain't no baby showers going on. That's what you lose out at. You have a baby out of wedlock, ain't no baby showers. And nobody at this church about to attend one. Mama shouldn't have one neither. You gotta take care of your granddaughter. You can't condone sin. You don't have no private baby shower. You can't have no baby shower. You lose all the pride and glory. You lose all that. You just lose all that. Thank God that God didn't take you out of here. I'm not, I'm not gonna be for y'all long. I keep saying that. I'm just still talking later. Hey, Bishop, you going to church? Yes, I'm black. He said, you going to church? Can a leopard change this? Can a leopard change this spot? No. If we, somebody said, I said, we never closed the church during the COVID. Why close the church on the flu, pneumonia? We closed it. We came then. Come, keep on coming. Right? So I said, well, they need on. Some folks don't need to come. I don't care. I'm not gonna tell you not to come. That's your choice. I know where I'm gonna tell you not to come to church. I can't fix my face to tell you, Bishop. I tell you, stay home, don't come to church. If you want to come. Now, if you say, Bishop, I'll let you stay home. But if you want to come, I can tell you stay home. I don't know what God have planned for you. I don't know how far your faith is. People have different measure of faith. But they shouldn't have been here. You don't know the measure of faith. You don't know what they're going through, and you don't know what they ask God for.
Oh, that's my body. Yo, ew, gross, disgusting. Everything, all of it. But also, sometimes when I find myself being really triggered, especially about content on the internet, because there's so many different places where there's not an understanding of the full story, and people respond and they are like really, really upset for people they don't know. And sometimes they're dealing with the things in their own home and communities. And this video inspired the thought and the T-chart, and I'll put this on the screen now, of the case of shaming in the Bible in the church. Because although this is very dramatic, I've actually heard this story 2 times before. Like two people that I know had to go through something like this. And I thought that it was archaic. I had no idea that somebody close to my age had to do something very similar for, another sin. I'll just say another sin. And I knew another person who had to do it for the same sin, but they were a little older than me. Well, a lot older than me. So it seemed like that was what happened during that time. So what's going on is we're transitioning with our thoughts. We have a lot of feedback about how Gen Z and millennials are responding, about this generation being, not of the old. But some of what's going on is stemming from what happened in the old way. And so those are things that we have to explore. So some of the prompts that come out of this is, one, like I mentioned, the case of shaming in the Bible in the church. I actually, as I'm sitting here, this was not even a long sermon, but it felt like forever. But as I'm sitting here, I had the same feeling when I visit different churches, or when I decided I was going to start going back to church and, try to fill it out. I was very uncomfortable because there was this idea that no church could be trusted. But I had to remove that because I do not believe this is a capture all churches and all churches are demonic and all churches act this way. And that's sometimes what stems from content like this is, now this is why the church is evil. I actually believe, and I've actually, even though I've been in a situation where it was very cult-like, I've actually been in an experience where I was supported for a lot of different experiences that actually cultivated me and taught me about my privileges here in the United States. And I can also see that these people were doing the best that they could with what they had, but no one was harming other people. It was always supportive. And I appreciate that in churches that try to do their best. I want us to understand that whether you decide to be in an organization and call it church or another organization, there's going to be some cult-like tendencies, some things that you're going to feel groupthink about. And then there's going to be experiences that's going to take that to the extreme. So with that being said, I had to recognize that sometimes when I am at a regular church experience, a regular, they might not call it a cult. They might say it's a regular church. I feel cult-like tendencies in what's called normal churches, where the pastor will go up and they will go onto a rant and everybody starts clapping. And I'm always the one pausing, like, why are we clapping about that? Or why is it okay for them to just shame people? Now, the shame is it varies based off of the extremists and the organization. So when you're in a cult, there's public shame. When you're in a cult, goodness grief, the type of shame, it's still, I don't even know why let me tell you a quick little story before I get into this. So I've witnessed a lot of public shaming on this level probably day after day after day in an organization where someone would come up with a question. This is why I am so interested in us being okay with questions, because people would come up with a question that they didn't understand about the Bible. And this is supposed to be a space where you're supposed to be able to learn, and you might not know. So if you don't know, you are supposed to get through these questions and prompts, and don't just stand there and not know, and then not really have sincerity in this relationship that you say that you believe in. Because what good comes out of you not really understanding your relationship? You just sit on the sidelines and you say, well, I don't know. So if I try to present this question, then I'm going to look like the fool. That happens in the church, whether it's on an extreme level or on a regular level. People believe that because they understand it, everyone else understands it. And so the person who doesn't understand it and has a question is belittled.
Just take a breath and tell me what happened.
So what happens in the church, in this particular church, is somebody would come up with a question. And if the question seemed dumb to the orator or whoever was on the stage representing themselves as a leader, they would make them feel really stupid and dumb. And sometimes be name calling. Yikes. But even in this experience, I'm sitting there, I'm not clapping, but I'm like looking around like no one thinks that this is weird. And then you know what happens? You shift like, why do I think it's weird if everyone else around me doesn't think that it's weird? But the way that I was designed, I don't stay there long. I'm not going to sit and recognize that everyone around me is doing the same groupthink and attach onto their belief system just because everyone else is doing it. So I recognize that in an extreme cult organization. But when you come to like what's seemingly your regular church service and your regular church organization, they are doing this on a level that seems like it's tough talk and like they're really just trying to like, mold you for the kingdom. But it's also still shaming. And it's these micro shamings that's even worse, where I have a theory or a hypothesis that there are things that stem from our church upbringing that's causing these mental imbalances now, where a lot of us are anxious, or there's some depression, or we are people pleasers, or any of these type of things that really has a lot to do with how we navigate with our relationships on the earth. Even the way that we might be to the extreme because of how we left one organization and they did us wrong. We don't want anything to do with it or understand it at all. I can't do this no more. We just go all the way to the opposite just because that's our reaction to how we've been brought up. Now, we have to make space, and this is what I've been making space for, practicing, where everyone doesn't get it, everyone doesn't know it, right? But you have to still be the owner and the author of what's going on in your faith walk. You have to be intentional and you have to be involved, because if you are someone who sits there and you have a question and you have that question, you got to at least go through the prompts to see what those answers may be and look at all the different perspectives. Now, one perspective I had to adopt here is I don't know how this man was brought up in the church, because we know that it's not like we always want to call out a villain and say like that evil man and he's just evil. Okay, I don't know. But the other side is he was once a child that was probably brought up in a faith that stemmed from something. So how far are we going to go back? Are we going to go far back? Let's talk about just the Black church, for instance. We're going to go as far back as slavery and how those type of mindsets have had an influence. Or are we going to go even further and say, for those who were enslaving people, where did they adopt that? And then we can go as far as back as what? From what I have here on earth, I can only go as far as back as the story that has been told to us, which is Adam and Eve. And then there's questions there. But in this exploration, I want to put up a T-chart. And it says the case of shame in the Bible. And on the left-hand side, and this is an activity for anyone who's interested in the Bible, even if you are against the Bible or you have disassociated yourself and you're just wanting to have healthier conversations, it's important to go through this source and understand what it is that you're saying. If you might not use prayer and guidance as your reference, but I think that is a good idea, especially if you are someone who's like trying to prove against the church. That's just an example. For those who are interested in the church and building a relationship and having quality questions with your creator, I've used this T-chart for a lot of my assignments here. And so the case of shame in the Bible is where I go. And I'm going to put a T-chart here. So on the left-hand side, it's, are there any stories or are there any scriptures that support shaming? And on the other side, are there any stories or are there any scriptures that doesn't support shaming, right? And so I'm just going to share one example for here because I do want those who are interested to try to do this assignment for themselves and be introspective, be investigators. So for against public shaming, this is one I think is really important. This is Galatians 6:2. Carry each other's burdens. In this way, you will fulfill the law of Christ. This is important because I used to struggle with the part of carrying other people's burdens. But here, we hear the pastor says that this young lady can't have a baby shower. From my understanding, when you have a baby shower, you get the support that you need to care for that baby. And I imagine some of us get dressed up. I got dressed up for my first baby shower. And I had a wonderful, and this is one thing I have to admit, that when you are in an organization of people who are trying to do their best and you get a sister, I have not had a sisterhood or a friendshiphood like one that you find in a cult. It's crazy. It's so crazy. And I've navigated the earth outside of it. And I expect that because I was, in a cult for a little bit, that it might make things a little weird, but I have to still be myself. But I just wondered, like, man, that was the only reason I would ever have gone back, is because there was some good. And that good was the type of sisterhood and support that you had. But also you needed it because you were having so many babies. But anyway, the idea here is carrying one another's burdens. That's something that I actually learned that was healthy in the organization, that you have a support system. So how do we do that without having this legalistic experience? So on the other side, we're thinking about, okay, are there any times in the Bible where public shaming was okay? So we have Paul in 1 Corinthians 5, chapter 5, verse 1-5. You guys can read through it. But in this idea, someone is being expelled from the church. And you'll see this a lot in cults where if you're not doing things the right way, you need to be out of the community. And this is always confusing because sometimes the reason people get put out of the community is because they have questions or because they aren't going with the grain. And that's disturbing because there should be a moment in time where if you're not destroying people or you're not like out here like, stealing and doing all these things, but your only case was that you had a question and you just wasn't following the grain, but and then you get kicked out. That's weird behavior. That's very weird. And I know that it's very difficult for people who are in this organization because what's happening here is we have a group of people that's clapping. So there's a group of people that are clapping. And this is one of the prompts that, actually, I'm going to share with you a few prompts. I'm probably going all over the place because I'm passionate, okay? But here's a few prompts when I tell you I was writing it down. So this is my prompt when I'm thinking about just my takeaway from the video. One is about the support of shaming. So that's why I have my T-chart. The next is about, have you ever clapped when you didn't want to clap because everyone else was clapping? Or did you ever start roaring or crying because everyone around you were? And I don't know, sometimes I'm in a position where I understand that maybe the typical thing to do is to act like everyone else, but I just cannot do it. It doesn't feel appropriate. Another prompt that I have is about mental illnesses. And I would love to explore with you all these case studies and these research studies about the church, therapy, and just what comes out of being in religious organizations. But also on the other side, I want to share that it's not just coming and shaming everything that's going on with the Black church or the churches in general. It's really about correcting it together. Like, we all know that there's some things and some issues, and we could be mad about it. We could be angry. We could start shaming other people. But really, what is the corrective behavior? What is it that we see? What are some examples that we see? So my favorite example, and I will probably always share this example because it's always the case. If I'm looking at Jesus and how people wanted to publicly shame this woman, he was there to protect her and support her, which I would imagine for this man in the church. I just imagine that, but like, am I the only person imagining that he should have been more of a protective layer for her? Because she's already probably shaming herself and feeling the worst. Is there a time where is there a balance between knowing that something is probably not ideal, but also just moving forward in love? Because what is the benefit of us sitting here and shaming other people? Like, one thing I like to do is I like to look at comments after some of these videos, but for this one, I just did. I don't think my heart was in it to look at any of the comments. So I went a different route, and I wanted to just look at some journal response to it, like those who are journalists and how they responded to it. And I came across this one from The Griot by Panama Jackson. And she says, 5 thoughts, prayers, and concerns about the young woman shamed for her out-of-wedlock pregnancy in the church community that shamed her. I will encourage you all to go ahead and read through her journal. She points out a lot of interesting thoughts. But I'm going to stop here at a part of her writing that I thought was very interesting. Is the number 5 thought. It says, look, I will never venture to the church, and frankly, nor was it likely I'd ever grace the door of True Vine. What that church and its members chose to condone is not my problem. I can see the video and situation for what it is, not like it, publicly condemn it and preach it, that from the highest mountaintops. But if that church and its members believe that this is how you treat people and the members follow suit and support the pastor and the rule of law, then I'm not sure what all of our public shaming will ever do. Hello! Let's highlight that. I'm not sure what all of our public shaming will ever do. Sometimes we spend our energy when we have this content sent to us and we're like going outside of ourselves. Like, he shamed her, let's shame him. Let's render evil for evil. Let's see what that could does. What I have a theory is sometimes why are we so mad? It's because something in us is triggered. Like, I understand my role is I have a issue with how I see things in the Bible about us being, better communities, how we speak and edify with our tongue, how life and death is in the power of the tongue, and how I navigate and gravitate to those, and then how everyone else who's following this Bible gravitates to the ones that say, let's shame them, let's judge them, let's make them feel horrible about their day every day. Let's make them feel insane. Like that's what it feels like. The prompt for some people in life is this: how can I make the Christian or ex-religion horrible experience for all people? How can I make it the most dreadful experience? How can I find another thing that a person has to think about to make life here on earth just heavy? No one, in my experience, and this is why I'm out here trying to be this person so I can see if there is an algorithm for those who want to care better about the church and about people. But is there a prompt where it's like, where can we find the elements that make life joyful with the idea that if you believe in this truth, that this truth is supposed to be something that represents love? And everyone has a different definition of love. When we look at love in 1 Corinthians 13, this is not love. He's keeping a record of her wrongs and exposing it. And this is where I wanted to stick. This is where I wanted to stick. What she's saying right here in this last line is, that's what the people are choosing. The people who condone this in the congregation, they all chose it. And they all continue to choose it, which is so interesting because when do we continue to choose it and clap? We choose and we clap because everyone else is doing it. But maybe everyone else is doing it because no one else is standing up and saying, hey, was there another option? Was there an option for her to have a meeting with you behind the scenes, for her to go through this process and understand, it happened. We can't go backwards. What's so interesting about everyone's sin and the difference between the sin that shows up. So the sins of people, and their sexual orientation shows up. The sin of people being pregnant shows up. So everyone thinks that because their sin is visible, that they need harsher punishment. But it's the invisible ones, it's the subtle ones, it's the ones that we feel like we're okay because we're behind scenes that also are just as much of a problem. If it's supposed to be this, if this is how your system is used, if this is how if you want to go through this system in church, you also have to admit that everybody should be standing up there with her. And everybody should be going through the line and say, I cursed someone out last night, or I masturbated last night, or with all the other sins that's in there. I looked at a woman and I wanted to woo her up with my body. Okay? All the things that you could think of. Y'all, everybody should have been in a line, one by one. Let's go through it. And honestly, if it was like that and everybody was just going through their sins all together versus one person, I might be on board and be like, okay, let's all just talk about it. But let's also realize that we can move forward and we can be better. Because the other thing about public shaming, and I had to admit this, is that when we are on the internet and we all admit that something is bothersome, it's good because then the other person can stop and they can say, yeah, maybe something is wrong with this. We also have to extend this to these subtle things that people are doing. And we also have to make space. Let me forget. I almost forgot, y'all. I did this whole video all passionate and forgot that these are I statements that I had to apply. If you want to consider the things that I'm saying, just remember that I'm saying that we should all do this because I want to have some type of community that's responsible for themselves in a way that they think and the things that they choose while also doing it together. So if I am in a community where it's individual contributors, we're individually contributing to the success of everyone else by realizing how we can be our best. How can we love the next person? Most of that is going to be how we love ourselves, because what trigger us and all the shame that we're doing right now, we can sit there and we can shame to the end of the day. But sometimes it requires us to go inward and say, what would I do about this situation? Have I ever been in a similar situation and did it on the opposite end? I have a theory that some people who are upset about this have done some type of shaming in another format, but didn't think about it the same because it wasn't something on the internet for everyone to see and to view and dissect. Now, again, I had to make space for this man and him being a child and him being taught the things that make him who he is today. But I also had to make room for this idea that there's something innate in us that allows us to go against the grain that doesn't support everyone. And we might try our very best to create systems and communities to make the world as happy as I want it to be. But then the other question is, what happens when the world is all happy and we all have the gumdrops rolling around and we all actually just get the click and we do our best? What will happen? Will the content change? I like Barney. Barney was a good show and he ain't harm nobody in the show. Okay. And I could live my life laughing at shows that don't harm people or I know that that's my personality. I have fun with this type of content, but the world that I live in, I also know that I have interest in the fact that this is dramatic and that this is a broken reality. But what can we do with the broken realities? I'm one of those people that thought that I would have a picture perfect life. I wanted my 12 kids, like my grandma, my 12 children, like my grandmother. I wanted to do all the things, and it got broken. And I remember my pride being like, dang, I can't tell everyone else that I don't have it all together because I'm a failure. And where did I get that idea? Those are things I want to explore. But before I close out this video, I just want to share with you something I went through actually last week, and I think it may apply here. Before I close this video, I want to read this passage from the Song of the Bird, Tony Day Mello, and just close here because this is something that I wanted to this is something that connected to this whole experience, that at least it connected in my algorithm in my world. And I want to share with you all because I want to just add a little bit of perspective to this entire situation. So it says, a man found an eagle's egg and put it in a nest of a barnyard hen. The eaglet hatched with a brood of chicks and grew up with them. All his life, the eagle did what the barnyard chicks did, thinking he was a barnyard chick. He scratched the earth for worms and insects. He clucked and cackled, and he would thrash his wings and fly a few feet into the air. Years passed and the eagle grew very old. One day he saw a magnificent bird above him in the cloudless sky. It glided in graceful majesty among the powerful wind currents, with scarcely a beat of its strong golden wings. The eagle looked up in awe. "Who's that?" he asked. "That's the eagle, the king of the birds," said the neighbor. "He belongs to the sky. We belong to the earth. We are chickens." So the eagle lived and died a chicken, for that's what he thought he was. And when I read this passage, at first I thought, yeah, like, we're in this environment and we're chickens and this is the reason why we keep doing the same thing. But then I actually had another prompt for myself and I said, is this realistic? Is it realistic for this eagle to be amongst an environment of chickens, to not ever feel different and to change? Is this realistic based off of what I don't know about, animals and nature? And once I, dug into it a little bit, I received the output that there's things about this eagle that's going to stand out, even though it's an environment of a lot of chickens. And when I didn't want to do this video, I said, probably going to say something about being in a cult. I'm probably going to say something that's uncomfortable, but it's easier for me to just kind of blend in and just not say anything. It's easier for me to not go to certain church communities and be a little bit different voice so that there's a perspective. It's easier for me not to do that. But lately I've been challenging myself that even though it's uncomfortable to be a little different than everyone else, it might be. It's a theory because we all people. We all have an option to choose to contribute in the most effective way. And I don't think any of us have, there's no respected persons here. It's just whether or not you choose to do so or not. Do you choose to stay in an organization that condones shaming? Or do you choose to stand up and say, hey, there's another option for us. We don't have to do this. And if we're going to do this, let's all be in the community together and let's all say our sin. Someone could stand up and say that if they find value in the church, because the other idea is that all churches aren't bad. And there are churches that operate with some decency and some order. And they're not going to be on the internet because no one's going to care. No one's going to be like, oh, look at how good that church is. They make me feel so good inside. They actually elevate me. They actually support me. I actually become a better person. I don't feel worse when I'm in this church. Sometimes I'm just listening to regular content. It's like, dang, now there's someone else I got to be, conscious of because I'm just this evil person. If the idea is to be righteous like Noah or, perfect like Job, or just perfect in general, if it says be ye therefore perfect, okay, let's practice it. Why do we keep going the other way and just keep saying like, we got to just tear ourselves apart? I imagine that that's part of the process, that there is some stripping, but there's a way to do everything. Like I really can, open up a box, and it could be, seamlessly. I could just do one little knife and then open it up, or I could just keep turning it up, making it hard for myself to get whatever's inside of that box. There's choices in how we navigate. But anyway, I just wanted to share the story. I wanted to come here and give my little piece about this. But overall, I would rate this as sad, because that's the word choice that I have for today. It's sad that we are here and we have this technology. I'll keep saying this till my mouth is blue and yellow and green. We have all of these seemingly intelligent ways to deal with our earth. And yet we cannot master how to deal with one another. And some of it might seem like it's not our fault because we've been taught it. But something tells me that we don't have to be chickens, or we don't have to be in a chicken environment or X environment if there's another choice. If we can feel that there's another choice. If you have an inkling inside of you that says, yeah, this don't seem right, explore it at least. Go through some journal prompts, go through some questions with yourself, explore why you wanted to, add, more shame or go through this content and be mad all over again. Explore that. And sometimes through that exploration, it could be, there's an advocacy that I need here. There's a change that I want to make in the world. And that's why I'm so inspired to talk about it. Until next time, hold on to you as much as you can. Hold on to your health, your well-being, and your mind. Be mindful. Bye.